to JDC West 2015, the not-for-profit case presentation. For everyone who's joining us, our judges are Rhonda Brown from Big Brothers and Big Sisters, down at the end there, Lee Yakubowicz from KPMG, I'm getting worse at this, from KPMG, Lee Krasilowicz from Community Foundation. We've got, Yolanda Meyer from Habitat for Humanity, and Robert Middleman from Royal Roads University, Melanie Melman from Victoria Hospitals Foundation, and Derek Wendish from MCO. Competitors will have 20 minutes to present. Immediately following the presentation, judges will have a total of 5 minutes to ask questions. The volunteer timekeeper, in the very bright shirt that you can't miss, will show time cards at various intervals to indicate the remaining time, and will stop any speaker who exceeds the maximum time limit. No questions, comments, cell phones, or photos can be taken by the audience at any time. And you're only permitted to apply after the question period is ended. As well, just do a double check to make sure you're not wearing any logo gear, because we'll know who you are. And as well, we ask you to exit the room immediately after, and do so quietly, just because the next team will be out there preparing for that. You may begin whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Mr. Noonan. We took a look at the Wellington community, and at first glance, we did see families struggling to break the cycle of poverty without a home to call their own. But we took a closer look, and we saw businesses, all sizes, willing to give these people a hand up. And then we saw the people themselves willing to put in the hard work to break that cycle. And we saw you. We saw Habitat for Humanity with big dreams. You want to double the amount of houses you provide in 2014, right? And you questioned, is this achievable? Yes, all right? There's an entire world of connections out there to make, and you are not alone. So we say, yes, it is possible. Oh, by the way, I'm Michael. We have Laura and Christiane, and we make Milk Consulting. And we want to start off with your mission statement. This will help guide us through to tailor everything towards your goals. You want to mobilize volunteers and communities. And in creating these partnerships, you help people build and provide affordable housing, and you promote home ownership, which in turn breaks the cycle of poverty. And we took a look at your core values and held these dear and important when evaluating alternatives. The first being housing for all, affordable and human dignity, because people deserve respect. Partnerships, because you can do so much more with everyone around you helping. Faith in action, because people that share in your belief and all this faith in your vision and mission get results by putting this into action, I should say. And lastly, diversity. There's room for anyone as long as they believe in the same mission, vision, and core values. We decided to take a look at people involved. But then we also want to narrow down to who's being most affected by future decisions. And we narrowed it down to donors and volunteers, because these are people that make building these houses possible. And the families involved, because these are the people who you want to impact.
So how do you, Habitat Wellington, reach your 2 times in 2014 goal? It's a really lofty target, but you've shared it with your sponsors, you've shared it with municipalities and people involved, and everyone is really excited about it. You've also already put people onto the team and put logistical plans into order, so it's something we really believe that should be pushed ahead with, and we're here to help you figure out how. So we've determined a few underlying issues that we'll address throughout. The first being, without that $1 million donation, which is in consideration, you don't have enough funding to reach the goal. So we'll address whether or not that should be something that's accepted. Next is that government has said they won't be giving you a grant next year, 2015, and they'd like for you to be self-sustainable. So again, we'll address that. And lastly, the donor base within Wellington is becoming a little bit exhausted. 80% of your donations in kind are from 8 companies, and there is new competition coming in. So looking forward, right now, you're the fastest growing habitat in the district. And of course, we're here to help you continue that growth and make an even larger name and an even larger impact for the people and the families. Also, your team, as I mentioned, is prepared for the logistics, so this is a huge strength to take advantage of, and you might as well go right on through, and we'll help you do that. However, like I mentioned, donations are right now actually just being pursued locally by Habitat Wellington. We see this as a little bit of a weakness because, as Michael mentioned, there are so many companies who want to help, so why not reach out to them? And then next is the high rent of your retail social entrepreneurship side of Habitat. So it's operating at a deficit, and it has been mentioned to us that you don't see it making a profit in the future at this location. As we look externally, the government and your sponsorship teams and all your donors are so supportive of you. They're right behind you, and they're just as excited about your goals as you are. And there are future government grants that are available, which haven't been taken advantage of, for grants for things such as wage expenses. A threat that we will consider and have already addressed is that there's a lot of new competition coming in who are going after the same donors that you are. So what does this all mean broken down? For the organization, you've mentioned to people this is something you're going to do, so if you didn't go forward with it, your reputation would be a bit on the line. Does Habitat actually live up to what they're saying they're going to do, and are they going to help the families that they set out to? But, as I mentioned, your team is completely in control of accomplishing this target. For the industry, the competition is a little bit more fierce as we're moving forward in the area. So basically, there needs to be an increased value proposition. Why should donors come to you instead of these new charities and organizations that are looking for their support as well? And of course, for the families, these are the people at the bottom line you are looking to actually impact and improve their quality of life. So you can help twice the amount of families and ultimately help these communities in which the families live in grow.
So here are the criteria that we're going to judge all alternatives by. And we also want to provide you something a little more tangible, a target. Think of it as a threshold. If it doesn't hit this, then regardless of whether or not it fills the criteria, we do not want to use this. So first is aligns with mission and values. We already went over those earlier. The next one is sufficient resources. We thought that you are already working hard at a capacity, and we don't want to take it further. So one of the measures we use is no new hires. Third one is generate sufficient finances. And we want you to break it even in 2014 and help you survive in 2015. And we calculated this to be around $249,000. Fourth is whether or not it benefits the primary stakeholders we outlined earlier, that being the donors, the volunteers, and the families. And last is becoming self-sustainable. This is because there's $40,000 worth of government grants that are no longer going to be provided to you.
So what are your options? In considering the $1 million donation that is on the table, this does come with the contracts, of course, as you know, the terms that they will have their name for a 5-year contract. Second alternative would be changing the fundraising strategy. This could be bringing in new fundraisers. It could be looking at a different target market for your fundraising. The third option would be to focus on the restore revenue stream and increase that side of the organization. And lastly, you could focus on corporate sponsors. As I mentioned, you can definitely be looking more than locally what other businesses are out there to go after. Now, using the criteria that Michael has outlined, looking at the donation, it has been portrayed to us that if you accept this donation, you'd have to go through a lot of effort with the Greater Habitat for Humanity organization. It is against the operating mission, and so we see this as being a major drawback. Why not look for other revenue streams if they are available to you? The second option is to focus on corporate sponsors. Now, while this is in alignment with your mission, and you do have sufficient resources to do it, you have a sponsorship team in place, we don't see that this could actually generate the sufficient finances that you need. The target right now that you're going after is a $200,000 goal, and as Michael mentioned, it's closer to $250,000 that you'll be needing to recover. As we look on to focusing on restoring the revenue streams with Restore, we see that this is strongly in line with your missions. It could bring in sufficient, or you do, have the sufficient resources to operate a store, of course, as you already are. And it also has been outlined that this is something that could be done just in the month of January, so it's a pretty quick move. as well as we see that it has the opportunity to generate the sufficient finances, which we will walk you through, and it can become self-sustainable as it's a consistent actual stream of revenue instead of relying on donors. The only drawback here is that in benefiting your primary stakeholders, it's not exactly an added value proposition to your donors and volunteers. Looking at the fourth option, however, this also has really great advantages in changing your fundraising strategy in that it could add that value proposition by actually including your volunteers and your donors in things and recognizing them and increasing your stewardship towards them. So what we're suggesting that you do is actually combine the last two options and focus on bringing in revenue through the store and through changing your fundraising strategies. So brick by brick, we are going to walk you through how to reach this goal.
So we're not naturally indecisive people. We made this decision because we want you to both make those connections with that the restore itself can provide, but also have the sustainable funding that the design strategy of your campaigns can provide, like the restore can. So that's why we want to, brick by brick, lay a broader foundation and allow you to build up. And how do you do this? Well, we broke it down into priorities. First of all, we want you to hit your goal. 2014, 2 times the amount of houses, 2 times the amount of people helped. Then after that, we want to help you provide value for stakeholders because it is a competitive environment now, and you have to have an added value proposition. The third priority is taking those restores to a next level so that you do have much more self-sustainable funding.
So we are extremely excited about this strategy, and we're going to walk you through. So the first priority of reaching that money to get that goal this year and hitting those 24 houses is to focus on the fundraising. So we're actually suggesting that you do cut that black tie event. However, we understand the value that you believe and why it exists, and we're suggesting that you actually add in a new event called Join Our Habitat. We are also suggesting that you add in 2 more barbecues because they are so quick to plan and bring in significant amount of money. $20,000 per barbecue is huge, and if it is a quick, feasible thing, we think it is viable to do. But adding in also 2 of these Join Our Habitats. And what these are very exciting things to combine both your sponsors, your volunteers, and the families, all of your primary stakeholders, to one huge event where you can say thank you and show the dedication that you have to the community. What we're suggesting, it is a family event, and what you would do is actually have entertainment for families, face painting, music, jugglers, things that families would be interested in. They can invite their children. We suggest that you invite the entire Wellington community as well as those other 3 primary stakeholders, so that it can be a community building event. And the biggest thing here is that you actually build a monument for a park that is within the Habitat community. Whether it be a small park, some of the parks may be in subdivisions, some may be in lines, but a small park somewhere within there that you can get access to, and you build a brick fence or outline around it. And what we're suggesting is that you actually sell the bricks to families to raise donations. And we think that you can actually raise a significant amount of donations from selling these bricks. We're suggesting that you sell $20 bricks to individuals or families, and this can be something where they have the ability to etch their name on. You know, the Fraser family, and the kids can put designs on it. They can write things that they enjoy, and they can feel like they're a part of this community just as much as those families. And then we also suggest that you actually sell corporate bricks or plaques that will be a part of this as well to larger sponsors, so they're featured within these communities, and they actually have feature in the community, not just providing it to the community. And the next thing, as Laura mentioned, that we would touch on is the restore. And we are suggesting that you expand to that new location. We did our analysis, and we discussed the differences between just staying at this one and trying to renegotiate the lease. However, we did find that this was risky because that lease negotiation is not certain. And also, when we looked at the revenue that you could bring in through changing after the $200,000 cost up front, it's a net of $350,000 per year that restore can bring in and help make you self-sustainable and not relying just on those grants. The next priority, after this is done, January to December 2014, will be providing value for stakeholders. And this is working on that stewardship and really making sure that your donors and your volunteers who make this happen know how valued they are. And although we do understand that you probably provide some of this, we're looking to hopefully work this into the park concept. Really sending letters out to the families, welcoming them, telling them about the park, and featuring the sponsors on there. As well as inviting the volunteers at their shift when they are going to these barbecues and to these larger events that you're trying to get the city involved, telling them to bring their families and their kids and that it will be a family event. Also sending email updates to all the families, volunteers, and donors regularly to try and show them what kind of impact they're making in the community with pictures of the park, pictures of the bricks being laid and the family names on them. And then also really focusing on that value proposition in everything that you send out to the sponsors and the volunteers, that they are able to have the community see how involved they are and have the community understand that they're directly involved in this community and trying to uplift it. We also are suggesting that at these events, that you feature the sponsors. So at the park events, when you're having the kids etch their names on, you actually have speeches where you talk about the sponsors and how huge of an impact they make, where you actually bring the volunteers up all together that have shown up, and you take a picture with them and you say, these are our amazing volunteers that show us what kind of impact they can do. And maybe you put the pictures up in the newspaper, you invite media, but also actually having, at those other barbecues, the smaller ones, having featured sponsors at the barbecue. So maybe this is the sponsor for one of your large, you have 8 specific sponsors that provide 80% of your materials. You make one of them, let's say Home Depot, if that's what it is, the Home Depot barbecue. And the next one is another barbecue for one of your sponsors. And you feature them and you show them how big of an impact it is, and you really try and add value to them. And then you invite constantly and consistently, inviting all of those volunteers and sponsors out to every event that you do. It's not just from families or the communities as well. And then priority 3 is management for self-sustainability. And this will be starting in January 2014, but working for you more long-term, as it is the 3rd priority. And this will be working on your board. Currently, you only have 7 members, but with our understanding of boards, there is room to add a few more members in there without it getting too large. And we actually think you could increase this to 12 and start to diversify it. Currently, you have a lot of entrepreneurs that do have business experience, but we feel that it's lacking some financial expertise that will help you manage those finances in the future, as well as we believe that you could potentially put some sponsors on there, and especially family members, to make sure that all of the board's decisions are actually impacting the families that you're trying to help. And lastly, working on those quarterly check-ins to make sure that things don't go unnoticed, having quarterly reports, quarterly meetings, and quarterly goals that you're setting to start making sure that you're hitting these and it's not getting out of hand to the point where you may not exist in next year. And you're following up with it and really working towards that self-sustainability.
So we anticipate the cost of Brick by Brick to be approximately $202,000. That's including the relocation of the store and hosting the food and things like that at the event. Benefit of this is that you are going to reach your 2 times in 2014 goal. It's going to be accomplished, and 24 families are going to be helped, ultimately resulting in increasing the amounts of families you can help every single year. Why not be 3 times the year after that, 4 times, 5 times? So how are we going to actually measure this plan? Michael in the beginning had outlined some targets that we outlined as an absolute must to hit for this to proceed. So in the first one, that it aligns with your mission. This, of course, is still going to align with building those affordable houses, keeping the family's dignity intact, and just maintaining that mission value. Having sufficient resources, we don't anticipate that you will need to hire any new people for this event, as you already have fundraising teams and corporate sponsor teams in place. Third one is generating sufficient resources. We had outlined the approximately $49,000 that you needed to recover. This is on the assumption of your revenues from 2013 and then the actual forecasted expenses for 2014. And with Brick by Brick, this will actually bring in $301,000 for Habitat Wellington. Looking at your benefiting your primary stakeholders, how are you going to impact the donors, volunteers, and stakeholders? They'll be recognized, included, and the communities will continue to grow. And of course, with being self-sustainable, the restore revenue streams are going to take care of that $40,000.
So we wanted to tackle 2 risks before they came and surprised anyone. The first one is public relations issues when you're working with sponsors. When you do sell the plaques, we recommend that you do have terms and conditions in your contract so that if something does go wrong, you will be able to sever your relations and take off the plaque so you're not associated with any horrible press. The second one is recognition of families. Sometimes these families don't want people to know that they did have to go through Habitat for Humanity to get some help. So first of all, the event where all these people will gather should stay open to anyone. That way, when you do run your events, these people do not have to be pointed out and distinctly recognized. And this will help them help provide the dignity that they want.
So today we are brought to you and are really pushing you to reach that goal. But how do you do it? You had a lot of money to reach that goal to try and make up. And there was a lot of exhaustion of donors and that self-sustainability that you are facing. We believe that you can be adaptive, you can be innovative, you can look at some options of how to reach out to those sponsors, look at new things that sponsors have never heard of, like plaques on playgrounds where they can be a part of that community, and then really reach your global understanding of your entire organization to work on that board members and creating that management and that providing that value to stakeholders. And we believe that through this you can help make strides to eliminate homelessness. We'd like to thank you for your time and would love to open up the floor for any questions.
All right, that concludes the presentation portion, and so there'll be a 5-minute period for questions for the judges. We'll give you an indicator of when you're on about the last question.
On the evaluation matrix, can you flip to that slide? So right there you have accept $1 million donation and 2 X's in the benefit primary stakeholders and become self-sustainable. Can you explain why accepting $1 million would not benefit primary shareholders?
Yeah, absolutely, I can touch on that. So our logic behind this was that when you're looking at your volunteers and your donors, they're not being directly impacted by this $1 million. The families absolutely are. You're going to be able to build more houses. But at the end of the day, is there an added value proposition? Are you including them more by building more houses? Are you showing more appreciation for them? We don't necessarily think so. And we believe that it's better to have a well-rounded appreciation for multiple donors as opposed to a one-time donor with contracts that are not in line with the mission and vision.
Okay, and on the second X, they're becoming self-sustainable.
So we believe that that is not nearly as self-sustainable as the restore, because that's going to be a consistent revenue stream that you can actually predict and project for the coming year. The $1 million, while maybe for the next few years is going to make a really large impact, isn't actually going to be a consistent value that you can rely on. It's a one-time donation.
I was very pleased to hear you talk about expanding or focusing on expanding the restore revenue, but I didn't see outside of moving the store how you were intending to do that. Can you expand on that for me?
On the restore revenue, yeah, definitely. We believe that you should really focus on the management, but the expanding to the square footage from the analysis in the financials that we looked at would actually allow you to sell more through that anyways, and it would have your rent. And so the rent right now in the area that you're in is extremely large. It's the only thing available at that time. So we think that you should be moving now that you have the space, can sell more, and when it is a lower rent, we think that's a much better option.
How are you going to finance the move of $200,000 if you're not taking the $1 million risk?
If you could just flip to the additional revenue slide. So if we look at the restore revenue stream, that's been forecasted for us as the $453,000. And then the $200,000 move, if we're subtracting that, is still going to leave you, if you go one back, Christian, it's still going to leave you, oh, that's not the right number, is with 300 and some after you subtract the, subtracting 200,000 from the approximately 500,000. And just to add up, Laura explained it very well, but you were saying to finance that move exactly. We did understand from earlier discussions that you did have the finances to move right away. So that's what we based our assumptions on as well.
Okay, thank donor.
Sorry, how do we manage
So if you
this?
say no to him,
Oh,
how do you manage that relationship in a way that's good for your overall objective?
I think a really good way is to explain to him that it is really difficult. You are a global organization, you're not just a Wellington organization, so it would be really difficult to abide by the regulations that he has, but to really try and work with him on showing him the value of these new events and what kind of impact that he can help make through them. Even inviting him out to them and showing him what other sponsors feel and having him talk to them can really help persuade him to become involved in the future. Right now, it's a take it or leave it. But maybe more as he gets involved and more as he sees the impact that the entire community sees from these sponsors, then he'll want a plaque on there, or he'll want the playground maybe named after him. And maybe that's the type of thing that you can try selling to him in the future, not necessarily just the naming rights to your entire organization in Wellington.
It looks like you're trying to supplant that $1 million through these other activities, which are over the course of the year. But you've ramped up your staff already as though you were getting that $1 million. So have you given any thought to how you're going to be able to afford that kind of huge HR budget?
yeah, we would suggest looking towards, first of all, the provincial grants that you can get for wage expenses. That would be definitely the first option, as well as you should be able to take from the additional $300,000 you'll be bringing in from the stores to divide that between some additional wage expenses on top of the grant.
With regards to 2014 and the promise to provide so many homes for families, and now you're delaying that promise by at least a year, if I'm correct. So I'm just wondering how you're communicating that to the community, families, and so forth.
Sorry, I think there was just a quick, like a small miscommunication. This is our plan to help.
Stop.
We believed it was, oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you.